If you're hearing this, either I am already dead or someone needs me dead fast. I am recording this under my own name, on my own equipment, off-network, and I am doing that because I do not have the window to build a clean chain of custody. I understand what that means legally. I understand what that means physically. I will walk you through what I can verify, what I only have on sworn statement, and what I cannot independently confirm because the original hardware is no longer in my possession. You will hear an operative's testimony. You will hear what he says went wrong in a containment site under Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. You will hear why I believe him. Before anything else, I need to build you a box you can stand in. I will not ask you to trust me. I will give you the parts, and you decide if you want to breathe the same air I am breathing right now. Yesterday, 27th of October 2025, I received physical media through a third-party courier I have used twice before on aerospace accident reconstruction work. The courier is a contractor who moves classified material between Air Force Materiel Command, private defense labs in Dayton, and two shells that claim to be avionics refurbishers in Columbus. I have verified his carrier plates and his cargo line on prior jobs. He is real. He is boring. He does not improvise. That makes him useful. The item he delivered to me was described as a black box, but it is not a standard commercial flight data recorder. A normal FDR is bright orange. On this unit, the housing is matte, almost gunmetal, with a layered composite skin and a recessed handle plate stamped Recorder, CVR, FDR combined, Property, USG, and then a line of characters that is not any procurement serial I recognize. I photographed the housing from all 6 sides under equal light. I ran a caliper on the bolt pattern and massed it on a kitchen scale. The weight is wrong for the volume. It reads light. You do not fake mass like that without access to the foundry. The metal smells faintly like heated copper and dust when you touch it. The smell clings to the ridges of your fingers. The recorder does not match any FAA civilian spec. It does not match standard Air Force mishap packages from an F-16, an F-22, a C-17, or even test articles like the X-37. I have pulled those. I have held those. I know the latch designs and epoxy choices they use. This box is something else. The seam sealant on the end cap is scored but not drilled out. Someone forced entry without the right tool, then pressed it back together fast. That tells me chain of custody was already dirty before it reached me. Inside the courier envelope was also a printed transcript. Not digital. Laser print, duplex, stapled. The pages are marked in the upper right corner with Annex H, Supplemental, and a classification block that does not match any clean derivative marking style I've ever seen. The font is wrong. The font is too clean. Whoever drafted it was pretending. To imitate an Air Force 2689 mishap annex and hoping I wouldn't notice the spacing. I noticed it in the first line. That means this transcript was never meant to survive discovery. It was meant to be summarized verbally and then shredded. I called 2 people after I got it. One is an avionics technician who sat inside life support at Wright-Patt, Building 620, from 2018 to 2022. He is out now. He will not go back on base voluntarily. The other is a civilian contractor from an aerospace failure analysis lab that has, in the past, been asked to reverse engineer burn patterns on materials the Air Force won't name. Both confirmed, off-record, that the call signs and timestamps in the transcript follow internal habit, the way the operative checks in, the way the handler answers with copy actual, not Roger, the way they mark radiation level increases in microsieverts and then stop doing that halfway through and start describing load instead of dose. That last detail is not in any public manual. That is internal language. That is either authentic or it was faked by someone who has already committed a felony, knows it, and is still talking. The air on my tongue tastes like metal when I say that out loud. Now, I'll tell you the part I cannot prove without you seeing what I saw. I played the recorder. It was not easy. This is not a plug-and-play unit. This recorder does not use any of the standard multi-pin layouts for crash salvage. The connector array under the access plate looks like someone melted late Cold War analog with modern fiber backbone, then potted the junction in a resin that throws off a low chemical bite when you scrape it. I had to build an adapter harness from scrap and pray. When I finally got the pins to seat and gave it stable power, the unit didn't boot like a normal cockpit voice recorder. It didn't play back rolling crew audio with engine hum and cabin bleed. It didn't even identify itself. It just went live mid-sentence, like I had dropped into an ongoing call that was still happening somewhere else. I have heard distress in cockpits. I have heard pilots scream, pray, and laugh on fire. What came out of that box was not a human voice in pain. It layered like signal. It cut like test tone. The nearest comparison I can give you is this. Imagine 12 channels laid on top of each other, each one with its own accent, cadence, and emotional temperature, all phase-locked in a way a throat cannot do. Imagine it drifting in and out of sync with itself, like your ears are half a second apart in time. That's what I heard. It wasn't talking to the crew, it was talking to the people who opened the hatch. The transcript in Annex H tries to render this as words. It writes fragments like witness, comply, observe containment, do not breach the lattice. No, that is cleanup. That is someone smoothing the edges to make it sound like orders. What I heard is not words run through a filter. What I heard is pressure pretending to be language. It felt like my teeth were vibrating in my jaw. Halfway through playback, I tasted copper and ozone, and the back of my throat went numb like dental anesthetic. I stopped the audio. I had to. My hands were shaking like I'd just stepped away from a live transformer coil. I want you to understand what that means. Cockpit voice recorders capture environment. They do not project environment. They do not create physical reaction in the listener. This one did. I can sit in front of a standard CVR all night and scrub final 2 minutes over and over, and the worst I get is nausea and ringing. This is different. This thing talks like an EM event, not a larynx. It talks like load, not speech. I also know this. Whoever pulled this box and moved it off, Wright-Patt knew they were not supposed to. The courier told me without me asking that the drop window was advanced by 6 hours and the pickup location was changed twice. He said his handler sounded stacked, his word, shaky, burned out. Repeat calling details he already gave. That is not how you move routine mishap hardware. That is how you move contraband. That is how you move a live warhead. The courier's hands smelled like cold oil and bleach when he passed me the envelope. He would not come inside. He would not touch my table. Why am I saying Wright-Patt out loud? Why am I saying Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio, like that, plain? Because I have already been called and told not to. I was told, by a voice that did not give a name, that if I attach the base by name to this material, I will be charged under unauthorized retention of national defense information. I was told I will be held in pre-trial in a communications blackout under domestic terror posture instead of mishandling, and that no one I work with will be allowed to acknowledge I exist. I recorded that call. I ran reverse lookup on the block of numbers that hit my phone in that span. 2 are Dead Air Mobility Command ranges. 1 is a DOE Protective Asset range. 1 is an internal Wright-Patt extension that, on paper, routes to a conference room that was torn out in 2019. Drywall dust. Nothing there but a table scar on the floor. So they are already spoofing from rooms that do not exist. This is why I am not going through normal channels. This is why this is not being handed to Air Force OSI, or AFMCPA, or any other office with a crest and a flag. I am outside the tree now. Once I speak this, I cannot climb back in. The air around me is warm, even with the AC running. I can smell the faint burnt dust odor electronics leave when they run too hot, even though the adapter harness is cold. Listen to me. This next part is not my voice. The transcript refers to the primary source as Asset Halo. Halo is a pseudonym. The real name is blacked out in the document after the first initial. I can see the ink block. The block toner is newer than the base print. Someone redacted. After the fact. The asset identifies his clearance level, his role, his team, the date, and his exact coordinates inside the base when the hatch opened. He describes air temperature shift, EM load, and a piece of hardware he calls Damascus Protocol. He says the thing in the chamber addressed them first before they addressed it. He says it called them Witness. I cannot verify Damascus Protocol as an internal program name. I have tried. I get nothing normal back. That is either real compartmentalization or a fake word meant to track leaks. But I can verify that there is a structure under Wright-Patt nobody will put on a map. There is a pressure change under the concrete out by Area B that does not match the published floor plan. I know that because civil engineering records show groundwater mitigation hardware going in there in 2009 for a storage annex that does not exist above ground. The pump specs are oversized by a factor of 4. You do not oversize water pumps unless you expect heat load, not rain. Heat load means hardware, not storage. Heat load means activity. This is the frame. This is the boundary. This is as honest as I can make it and still be alive in the chair. What follows is the operative's testimony. My call sign was Halo. My real name sat under black tape in every copy of Annex H. I held green stripe access under Air Force Materiel Command, Rapid Acquisition Directorate, Compartment Iron Vault, Subcompartment 3H. That meant I was allowed to touch, move, and document material that did not officially exist yet, but was already dangerous enough that lawyers wrote non-disclosure language using phrases like catastrophic release and civilizational risk. I wasn't a shooter. I wasn't flight crew. I was recovery. I brought back hardware that wasn't supposed to fall out of the sky. On 14th of October 2025, at 0200 local, I was on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Area B, grid line near 39.826 north and 84.048 west. That puts you southeast of the museum and west of the long-term storage pads. The area is marked as mixed test and archival. That's a lie. The area runs hotter than that at night. We were built as a 5-man element and briefed as a routine containment pull. Containment pull means go to a hole, pull what's humming, catalog it, bring it home. It sounds boring on paper. On paper, containment reads like hazardous material response with better pay. In practice, it means nothing in that hole belongs to physics with a manual. My job title on the manifest was Materials Integrity Specialist. That's the cover. In plain terms, I make sure whatever we grab doesn't cook us from the inside or walk away on its own. We rolled as me, Halo, Chapel on spectrum control, Rook on breaching and demo, Ledger on biostatus and atmospheres, and Voss on perimeter and kinetic problem solving. No last names in the log. Never last names. Chapel was our comms and EM. Female, late 30s, prior signals. Intelligence, then civilian liaison, which is the polite way to say she got pulled out of uniform and never got to leave. She carried a modified RF sweep case the size of a kid's backpack. She could build you a live map of everything screaming between 1 kilohertz and 40 gigahertz within 50 meters. She didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in signal. She said if you can see the spike, you can kill the spike. She chewed the same brand of cinnamon gum on every op. The air around her always had that dry, red candy smell. Rook was entry. X, explosive ordnance disposal. He handled shape charges, cutting torches, lock defeat, and anything labeled access denied. Rook carried the breaching pack and a suppressed short-barrel carbine broken down into halves so it wouldn't print under his jacket. He kept his beard tight and his gear cleaner than anyone I've ever seen. He never stopped moving his fingers. He tapped on his own thigh like he was playing silent piano. He was the first one to laugh when he shouldn't and the first one to shut up when it mattered. Ledger was medical, but not in the soft way. Ledger ran blood gas, cortisol, core temp, radiation dose, and airborne particulate, all in real time. He liked numbers more than people. He carried a portable mass spec the size of a lunchbox and treated it like a pet. He never raised his voice. He said panic wastes oxygen. He said panic makes you stupid. Ledger had a kid in NICU back in Dayton Children's. Premature. Lungs not ready. He showed me the photo once. Pink skin. Clear tube. Eyes forced shut. He kept that photo folded into the clear flap behind his badge. He shouldn't have brought that badge in. That badge should have stayed in the locker. He brought it anyway. Human stake. Voss was security. Tall. Lean. Calm. Former 21st Security Forces group, allegedly, though Chappell swore his drawstroke looked JSOC and I believed her, not him. Voss didn't talk unless you addressed him. He talked like gravel when you did. He carried a compact suppressed 300 Blackout with subsonic rounds that make more punch than noise. He also carried a less-than-lethal launcher none of us had ever signed for. That was new kit. No markings. Matte gray polymer. He called it the Persuader. He smiled once when he said that, and his eyes didn't. We met in a room with no unit crest at Aero 132. The briefing officer called himself Conductor. He never sat. He never took off his gloves. He had a tablet, not paper. He said the mission was a radiological accountability survey on an underground storage annex that predated current environmental controls. He used those exact words like he'd practiced them. Radiological accountability survey. He said we were going to confirm shielding integrity, pull legacy material for catalog, and clear the annex for demolition. He said EPA would be on site within 48 hours, so we were on the clock. That was the official. That pitch was trash, and we all knew it. First problem. If you are really doing radiological accountability under EPA clock, you bring 2 full hazmat teams, a crane, a secured perimeter, and at least 1 lieutenant colonel who wants credit. We got none of that. We got 5 names and a van. Second problem. I watched Chappell watch Conductor while he talked. She wasn't watching his face. She was watching his sleeve. Chappell reads people by the way their forearm flexes when they lie. She says the wrist always tells the throat. She shifted her gum to her other cheek and didn't write anything down. That means she had already decided the brief was theater. Third problem. The paperwork. The paperwork was wrong. We all sign in and out of containment pools using Form 1972C. You initial the material class. You initial the exposure window. You initial acknowledgement of live capture authority. You always initial that last one, because if you end up taking in a living asset instead of dead hardware, JAG needs that yes on file. That page was missing. We didn't initial live capture. That scared me more than anything Conductor actually said out loud. When they pull legal language, it means they don't want to admit they authorized what you are about to do. I asked Conductor why a radiological survey needed live capture language at all. He said, "It doesn't tonight." He said it too fast. He dropped a map on the table. Hard copy, not digital. He traced a gloved finger along a service tunnel that didn't exist on any base layout I had ever seen. He said we would move from Building 219 down through the sub-basement, across an access corridor labeled on paper as HVAC crawl, and into Annex 3H. Annex 3H was not on the base map. Annex 3H was only on his copy. Chappell took a photo of that finger path on her phone like she was just casually logging, but she angled so the lens caught his wrist, his sleeve, and the watch face under his glove. We all pretended not to notice. Ledger asked if we had a current rad profile down there. He said he wasn't walking in blind dose. Conductor said levels were elevated but manageable. Ledger said numerical, like he always did. He never accepted adjectives. Conductor said 3.2 to 4.1 microsieverts per hour. Ledger and I locked eyes when we heard that. 3 to 4 microsieverts is high background, not annex-level containment. That was too clean. That was a number you say when you want somebody calm. It smelled like someone wiping down burnt metal and telling you it's just dust even while you taste copper on the air. The last thing conductor told us before we stepped off was this. He said, "You will hear things that are not addressed to you. Do not answer them." Clean like that. No build-up, no smile. We all went quiet for half a beat. You could hear the hum off the fluorescent tubes in the ceiling. You could smell old mop water baked into the concrete. Chapel finally said, like she was bored, "Who are they addressed to then?" Conductor said, "Legacy Protocol." That was his phrase. Legacy Protocol. Then he told us comms discipline was absolute, and any deviation would be treated as breach of containment. Voss asked if breach of containment meant lethal force. Conductor said, "It means breach of containment." He didn't blink when he said it. I slid a ring into my left bicep pocket before we left the room. Titanium band. Low glare. I had been carrying it for 3 weeks. Lena was still in recovery from her last round of radiation. Thyroid. They said the margins were clear. They said she could go home on the 15th. I was going to ask her then. I told her I had a night job on the 14th. I told her it was routine. I told her I'd be back before sunrise. I said the same thing I always say. This one's clean. I said it like I believed it. We moved at Euro 1 Fit 4. We staged out of a white box van with no plates. The van smelled like bleach and rubber gloves. The floor had fresh non-slip matting bolted in over the factory bed. Somebody had pressure washed it that night and hadn't let it dry. You could still see water beating at the seams under red light. The driver wore no unit patch. He never gave a name. He said nothing the entire drive. He had a base access badge on a lanyard flipped backward so we couldn't read it. Voss watched him the whole time in the side mirror. Voss never watches the road. Voss watches the hands that touch the wheel. We rolled with blackout covers across the rear windows so we couldn't see landmarks. That's normal for off-book runs inside a base when somebody doesn't want you clocking route and distance. Still, I counted turns. Left, right, gate buzz, short straight, downhill ramp. You can feel downhill in your knees even when you can't see it. The air gets cooler and damp, like old concrete sweating. We stopped inside a loading bay I didn't recognize. Overhead, sodium lamps, yellow and tired. You could hear the ballast hum and the slow tick of metal cooling down. The bay door behind us came down fast and hard, and the echo bounced longer than it should have, like the space past the door wasn't a normal hallway. My ears popped like pressure in a plane on descent. That was the first thing that wasn't right. Chapel was already live. She had her sweepcase on and her tablet out, lined to a collapsible whip antenna she'd thrown up against the van roof. She whispered, "Baseline," to herself and pulled a rolling capture of the EM environment. I watched the trace over her shoulder. Clean standing noise at 60 Hz off the building power, HVAC chatter in the low kilohertz, base trunked radio nets at their usual bands. Our encrypted net sitting dark, waiting. Then, under all of it, a slow pulse in the subaudible range. Low. Too low. You don't normally see that in a parking structure. It was more like submarine comms than base chatter. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Chapel frowned and tapped her gum against her molars. "We got LF bleed, and we're still topside," she said. That was anomaly 1. Instrument first. We stepped out. The air tasted like dust off an old CRT monitor. Dry, metallic, faint ozone. Ledger snapped open his mass spec and took an air pull. He watched the screen and said, "No VOC spike, no aerosolized metal. Oxygen, 98% baseline. CO2 under 1%. We're good for masks down." His voice stayed flat, but his nostrils flared. He smelled it, too. Rook grabbed the breaching pack and rolled his shoulders like he was walking into a gym instead of an unlisted annex under a base that doesn't admit it as unlisted annexes. "So," he said, "we doing Radiological Girl Scout badge or we doing Find the Screaming box?" I told him to shut up. I didn't mean it. Rook's mouth was pressure relief for the whole element. If he went quiet too early, I got nervous. We moved through a steel door with no label. The paint on the door was newer than the paint on the frame. The hinges didn't squeal. Somebody maintained this space even though it didn't officially exist. The hallway past the door was painted cinder block, Air Force light gray, with a darker gray stripe at waist height. The stripe color didn't match any normal flight line, maintenance, or medical code. It ran unbroken down the hall and around the corner. Voss moved first, muzzle low, head steady. Chapel walked second, tablet open, antenna collapsed now and braced against her vest. I walked middle with the capture kit. Ledger walked just behind my left shoulder so he could see my vitals on his wrist unit. Rook pulled rear with the breaching pack and his carbine halves magnet clipped to his plates for fast build. We passed 2 doors on the left and 1 on the right. All unmarked, all with badge readers that didn't blink. Chapel held her tablet up as we passed the second door and said, almost to herself, "RF dead zone to the right. Wall is eating my sweep. Either that's a Faraday cage or a hole that isn't supposed to be there." She logged it. I saw her thumb move. She never stopped logging, even when they told her not to. She always said the air forgets. The record doesn't. We hit a T. Conductor wasn't with us. He'd stayed in the briefing room. We were solo now, walking lines somebody else drew. The map in my head matched the route he'd traced with his gloved finger until it didn't. He'd shown a straight run and a single ladder down. We were already 2 turns past straight. "Map drift," I said. "Copy," Voss said. Map drift inside a secure facility means one of 2 things. Either they lied on purpose to keep you from knowing where you are, or the space you're in does not fit the map because the space you're in should not exist. I tasted copper again. We reached a blast door at the end of a short run, olive drab, heavy, the kind of door you use in ammunition storage or hardened aircraft shelters. The paint had been retouched in wide, lazy strokes like a dock crew had slopped it on at 3 a.m. The latch assembly was old. Not Air Force. I've seen that lock plate before in pictures of decommissioned Soviet submarines, back when they still ran double-hull boats and loved overbuilt manual closures. I ran my fingers along the hinge edge. The metal felt warm. Too warm. Ledger put his palm up close and hissed a breath between his teeth. "Ambience 20 Celsius, he said. "Door skin is 32 and climbing. That's not rad bleed. That's active heat." You could smell it now. Hot air leaking around the seal. Ozone and warm copper. Rook cracked his knuckles and slid between me and the door. "My turn," he said. Chapel cut in. "Hold." We all froze. Her tablet trace had jumped. I saw it. A spike punched up across the low band, wide and dirty, then settled back down. It was too regular to be noise. It wasn't machine chatter. It read like speech. Speech without vowels. She swallowed hard. "We're getting addressed," she said. "From where?" I asked. "Below us," she said. We all went quiet. You could hear the hum coming off the door, low and steady like a transformer coil under load. You could also hear something under the hum. Not a voice. A pattern. A rhythm that tried to feel like syllables but stayed just off. Ledger muttered, 3.2 to 4.1 microsieverts, my ass, under his breath. Rook laid out his cutting kit. He glued 2 shaped charges in a clamshell around the latch. The glue set faster than normal. He frowned at that. "Adhesive is curing too fast," he said. "Feels like the air's 10 degrees hotter than it reads." Ledger checked his wrist. "Air is still 20, he said. "You'll cook your fingerprints if you keep palming that latch." Rook stepped back, spooled line, and looked at Voss. "Do it," Voss said. Rook popped the charges. "Here's the part that made the hair on my arm stand up. Shaped charges throw spark and spall even when you're tight and tidy. They throw light. They throw smell. They bite the air." His charges popped with a dull metallic cough, and then the sparks just slowed. Not like slow motion. Like somebody forced them heavier. You could see each bright fragment fall out of the air faster than gravity says it should, like they were made of lead. The glow died too fast. The smell hit late. Sulfur and hot metal, but delayed, like a gust through a long pipe. "Physics says no," Rook whispered. The latch slumped. The door cracked inward on its own like something on the other side had been leaning against it. Hot, dense air spilled out. It carried the smell of old dust, warm copper, ionized metal. My tongue went numb along the edges. We had not even gone below grade yet, and we were already breathing air that didn't belong to this floor. We opened the hatch. The first sense that we weren't alone down there wasn't visual. It was pressure. When the blast door opened, the air that hit us felt thicker than air. Not smoke, not steam. Something with weight but no body, like walking into a room where somebody just welded without ventilation, only there was no weld flash and no visible haze. My lungs registered resistance. My ears rang low. The hair on my forearms lifted like static. I tasted dust and faint sweetness, the way fruit left in a locked car tastes when it started to rot in heat. Ledger's wrist unit beeped twice and then went silent. He slapped it. Nothing. "Vitals uplink just died," he said. "Local capture still good, but uplink's gone." That was not supposed to happen. Our internal bio-telem bounces off a line-of-sight repeater we carry on our own backs. It shouldn't fail unless reality between us bends. The corridor beyond the door wasn't base standard. Base standard underground corridors are poured concrete, painted block, regular lighting every 2 meters, red stenciled warnings. All of it. This wasn't that. The walls here were raw concrete but older, poured in thick slabs with rebar scars visible where patch jobs had been done. Somebody had burned symbols into those slabs. Not spray paint. Burn. The marks were scored in black glass where concrete had been flash melted and refrozen. Each mark repeated with microscopic variation, like a stamp done by hand. Circle inside angular frame inside another circle, with radial cuts that almost lined up with each other but never quite did. If you stared too long, the lines felt like they were still moving. My eyes watered. My stomach rolled. I had to look away. Chapel muttered, "That's not language," under her breath. Then a beat later, softer, "Or it's not ours." The floor sloped down. You could feel it in your knees and calves. 30, 40, maybe 50 meters worth of grade ahead if the map in my head was right. The lighting wasn't fluorescent. It wasn't LED. The light source bled out of fixtures I couldn't name. They looked like bronze cage lamps bolted into the ceiling at irregular intervals. The cages sweated. Actual moisture beaded along the ribs and dripped slow. The light inside each cage pulsed at a lazy, uncanny beat. Not on, off, more like inhale, exhale, warm, then warmer. The color sat somewhere between sodium yellow and hot copper. You could hear them hum. The hum made the fillings in my back molar itch. Chapel raised her tablet again. "Still getting LF pulse," she whispered. "It's louder, and it's modulating around us." Her voice had gone tight now. She wasn't chewing gum anymore. I hadn't seen her take it out. It was just gone. Voss moved first, barrel up now. Muzzle steady. I watched his shoulders. Voss never hunches. Voss rolled forward loose and confident like nothing ever surprises him. He was hunched now, just a little. Enough. We moved down in stack. Voss, Chapel, me, Ledger, Rook. The air got hotter fast. Sweat gathered under my plates. My gloves felt damp. The concrete walls sweated like the lamp cages. Condensation tracked down over the burned symbols and hissed when it touched the black glass lines. Steam rose in thin threads. I could smell mineral, iron, something almost like blood drying on hot metal. Halfway down the slope, the radio clicked in my ear. 1 click, then 2. That was our code for check. I answered with 2 clicks back, standard. The radio clicked again on its own. 3 quick hits. 3 means stop. Voss froze and raised his fist. We all froze. There it was again. Sound from ahead. Barely there at first. Like someone whispering through a wall. Too many voices at once, layered, laughing, crying, praying, begging, angry, calm, all of it. The consonants landed before the vowels. The timing was wrong. My skin went cold even though the air burned. Voss whispered, "Left side," except his lips didn't move. I watched his profile in the copper light. His jaw stayed shut while I heard his voice as clear as if he'd leaned into my ear. I swallowed hard. "Confirm vocal," I whispered. "I didn't say that," he whispered out loud this time. Rook cursed under his breath. Even his whispers sounded too loud in that space. "Nope," he said. "Nope, nope, nope." That was when we reached the hatch. It wasn't a hatch in any modern sense. It wasn't an Air Force access panel with torque bolts and a seal. It sat in the left wall, chest high like the side access on an old maritime vessel. The metal around it wasn't American. It wasn't even NATO. It looked Russian, maybe older. Heavy steel with layered weld beads, thick and ugly and proud. The handle wheel was pitted and scarred with old burn marks. Fresh scoring ringed the edges of the plate, like someone had torched it from this side recently, then let it cool. You could press your palm near it and feel radiant heat rolling off in waves. My glove got warm fast. I pulled back. The weird part wasn't the metal. The weird part was the frame. The hatch sat in poured American concrete, but the frame around it was a different material. Dark, dense, almost black. The surface wasn't smooth. It shimmered like oil on water. It bent light around its own edges, just enough to make your eyes refuse to lock focus. I squinted and saw my own reflection for a half-second, except my eyes in that reflection were just a fraction too far apart, and my mouth lagged my expression by half a beat. I jerked back so hard my plates clacked. "Did you see that?" I asked. "No," Ledger said fast. Too fast. He had seen it. Rook set his breaching kit down and ran his hand along the seam. His fingertips came back shiny like he'd touched grease. He rubbed finger against thumb. "This isn't oil," he whispered. "It feels like gel. It's cold." He held his fingers up to his nose and sniffed. "Sweet," he said. "Like fruit in a trunk." We hadn't touched the wheel yet, and we already had sensory wrongness, EM wrongness, map drift, and live heat off a sealed hatch that shouldn't even exist in a corridor that doesn't show on any base plan. I should have called abort. I know that now. I should have said breach of containment in net clear voice and forced a pullout. That would have triggered automatic lockdown topside and brought conductor and whoever he answers to down on us. Which is why I didn't. You say those words, you never work free again. You say those words, you disappear into a box no one maps. Instead, I nodded at Rook. "Wheel looks fused," he said. "Unfuse it," Voss said. Rook set the torch head. He pulled the igniter. The flame came up blue-white, hissed, and then did something I have never seen fire do in my entire career. It folded, not out, in. Like the flame hit the surface of that black frame and got pulled sideways into it like wind grabbing a tarp. Rook yelped and killed the line. The smell that came off that half-second of burn wasn't torch smell. It was ozone and hot copper and something sweet. My teeth ached. "That's not steel," Rook said softly. "It's a door," Voss said. "Open it." Rook grabbed the wheel with both hands, braced his boots, and threw his weight. The wheel didn't move at first. Then it gave with a dry groan like old bone grinding in a socket. The hatch popped an inch. Heat rolled out. Real heat now. My face went slick. My throat went dry. My ears rang. The layered not voice surged, full force, like somebody had been standing on the other side of that metal and waiting for gaps in the seal. "Witness," it said. It didn't sound like one voice. It sounded like 12 voices braided. Male, female, young, old, accents from the South, Midwest, Northeast, no region, all talking in one throat, half a beat out of sync with itself. The vowels slid. The consonants hit too hard. The timing made my stomach twist. The word rode not just my ears but my bones. I felt it in my ribs. "Comply," it said. Voss went white. I have never seen that man's face go white. Ever. "Do not answer," I whispered. We opened the hatch. We dropped 37 meters on a vertical ladder that should not have existed according to any structural plan I've ever signed off on. I know it was 37, because Ledger counted rungs under his breath and his cadence is perfect. Every 10th rung he would murmur 10, 20, 30, like a metronome. His voice echoed wrong in that shaft. The echo didn't come back with the same timing we sent it. It came back late, like the space below us was deeper than the space we were in. The ladder rails were warm. Not room warm, body warm. Like grabbing a railing someone else just let go of. Except no one had used that ladder in decades, if ever. The metal felt slightly soft under my gloves. Not like metal, more like cartilage. I flexed my fingers after the first 10 meters. They tingled. I shook them out and felt pins and needles crawl up to my elbow. The air downshaft smelled like hot dust, ozone, metal shavings, and something faintly sweet. Same rot note as before. Fruit left in heat. Under it all, a low hum. Constant. The hum vibrated up through the ladder and into my bones. At 15 meters down, Chappell said, "My camera is lying to me." We all paused on the ladder, boots braced, shoulders pressed against concrete slick with condensation. I looked down. Her body cam LED showed green capture. That meant it registered video, but the feed mirrored on her wrist tablet showed static. Not black, not distortion. Static, like old broadcast snow. Every few seconds, one clean frame punched through. I saw Ledger's back one time, crisp, but flipped like a mirror. I saw the ladder rungs, but bending slightly like they were rubber-warmed under a heat lamp. I saw my own hand on the rail, except my ring finger looked too long and there were faint black lines like thin tattoos burned into the meat under my glove. I don't have tattoos. "Is it recording?" Voss asked. "It thinks it is," Chappell said. At 20 meters, our radios showed full connect across our intra-team net, but we couldn't raise conductor. Voss tried. "Actual, this is Voss," he said. "We are in descent. Ladder vertical, radios green. How copy?" Nothing. Not even static. Silence. That's not how radios fail. Radios fail loud. Radios fail with squeal and pop. Silence means either you're not transmitting at all, or you're transmitting into nowhere. Ledger's wrist alarm chirped like a heart monitor. He looked down. "Compass drift," he said. "I know where down is," Voss said. "Not that," Ledger said. "Heading spin. My digital compass just spun 40 degrees and spun back. We're in a Faraday pocket. Magnetic reference is slipping. That shouldn't happen in poured concrete with rebar unless the rebar is hot. Is the rebar hot?" He thumped the wall with his knuckles. The wall thumped back a half-beat later, like an echo you feel in your skin instead of here. At 30 meters, we hit the bottom. My boots touched concrete slick with condensation and something oily. The floor felt slightly soft under load, like damp cardboard under rubber. The air was heavier. It pressed against my chest. I could hear my own pulse in my jaw. We stood in a chamber that didn't match the shaft we'd climbed down. The shaft above us felt maybe a meter wide. The room we stepped into opened out 4, 5 meters in every direction before the first wall. Rook turned in a slow circle and whispered, "How is there this much volume under that much mass with that support pattern?" He sounded more angry than scared. Rook hates bad engineering. The walls around us weren't bare concrete anymore. They'd been skinned with some kind of composite. The surface looked like stone at first glance, like carved basalt panels. If you stared, it wasn't. Stone. It flexed, just a hair, like skin over muscle. Black lines ran across those panels in repeating patterns. Same geometry we saw upstairs. Circle in frame and circle in radial slice that almost lined up but didn't. The lines glowed dull red from within, pulsing against the dark like coals under ash. My vision swam if I stared too long. Ledger muttered, "Stop looking at it," and I snapped my head away. We weren't alone. That's the part I don't know how to say without sounding like I broke. I saw movement at the edge of the spill light from our helmet rigs. Something stepped, slow, just past where my beam fell off. I snapped my light toward it. The beam caught a shape, and the shape reacted like it had mass and volume and skin, but my eyes couldn't solve it clean. My brain tried to fill gaps and got mad. It was roughly man-height, maybe a little taller than Chapel. Shoulders narrow, limbs long, too long, elbows sitting lower than they should. The arms hung past where the knee should have been. The joints bent, but not right, bent like reversed, then corrected. The surface looked like skin if you didn't focus, but the light off it didn't behave like light off skin. It didn't matte. It didn't shine. It slid. The light hit, caught, and then bent around it like pouring a flashlight beam into warm oil. The head sat where a head should sit, but it didn't quite connect to the neck. It hovered, just a hair, like a bad composite in cheap footage. The face had features in the usual places. Eyes, mouth, jawline, nose, but the distances didn't solve. The eyes sat a fraction too far apart. The mouth lagged the shape of the lower face by a fraction of a beat, like audio out of sync with video. My stomach twisted and my jaw clenched on its own. My tongue tasted metal. Rook whispered, "Jesus Christ," but his voice cracked on Jesus and broke off like he couldn't finish the name. Then it stepped. I say stepped, but that word is generous. The floor didn't flex under it. The wet sheen on the concrete didn't ripple. It existed in one spot and then existed a half step closer, with a motion that convinced my eyes it had stepped, even though the math of the room said it hadn't crossed the space between those 2 points. That's the closest I can get. My head hurt trying to track it. My neck muscles tightened so hard I felt a pulse. Voss raised his carbine half an inch. "Hold," I hissed. I didn't want to see what bullets did down there yet. The layered voice rolled over us again. Closer now, inside the room instead of through walls. My spine buzzed like a tuning fork. "Witness," it said. "Comply. Do not breach lattice." "Do not answer," I whispered. My throat felt raw. I don't remember clearing it. I don't remember breathing. The shape tilted its head, slow, like it had heard me think. The air around it shimmered like heat off asphalt. The hum in my bones jumped half an octave. My left hand tingled. I looked down. My glove fingers were leaving faint black streaks where I'd touched the wall. The streaks pulsed once, like heartbeat. Then they faded. Chapel whispered, "It's watching us." Her voice shook. Chapel does not shake. "How do you know?" Ledger asked. Chapel swallowed. "Because my tablet thinks there are 6 signals in here, and we are only 5. "Where's the 6th? Voss asked. Chapel tapped her screen without looking down. "Everywhere," she said. We pushed forward anyway. At the far side of the chamber, past the place where the not right shape stood and didn't stand, the floor opened into something that did not belong under an Air Force base in Ohio. It looked like somebody had sunk a machine shop into a cathedral and then wired the whole thing into a reactor. The room was big, bigger than the volume we should have had under that much reinforced concrete. The ceiling arched up in a slow curve like the inside of an aircraft hangar. The curve wasn't smooth. It was ribbed with bronze-looking spars and black composite tendons that crawled along the arc like muscle. The ribs vibrated. You could see them hum. You could feel the vibration in your molars, steady like generator thrum, but layered with a higher buzz like live transformer windings. In the center of the space sat the core. I keep calling it the core because I don't have a better word. Imagine a reactor vessel, but not a cylinder. This thing was shaped almost like an altar and almost like an engine block. A block of dark metal or stone about 2 meters high and 4 across, ribbed with channels. Thick, Braided cables ran out of those channels into racks of modern equipment that had clearly been bolted on later. The racks were standard Air Force test benches, aluminum frames, labeled junction boxes, fiber bundles zip-tied in compliance loops. Someone had welded those benches straight into something that looked like it belonged in a Bronze Age burial chamber. That clash is what made my stomach hurt. The old part wasn't dead. The old part wasn't relic. It was live. It was humming. It was running current. You could smell it. Hot dust, ionized air, warm copper. The modern racks weren't controlling it. They were leeching off it, siphoning power, measuring load, trying to talk to it in our language, and our language was all over it. That's the part that broke Ledger. Along the flank of the core, above one of the cable junctions where a thick bundle of modern conduit vanished into a natural-looking channel in the stone, somebody had bolted on a brushed steel plate. The plate had a serial block stamped in English. It read, Damascus Protocol. Serial DP03, Property US Gov. Under that, etched by hand like an afterthought, was, Do not answer it if it talks. Ledger stared at that plate and said, No. Almost like a prayer. He said it again, louder. No. He shook his head. He looked small in that room. Ledger is not a small guy. Chapel drifted right, keeping her tablet up like a shield. The tablet shook in her hands now. Signal environment is hostile, she whispered. I'm not kidding. I have passive LF, VLF, weird HF harmonics that shouldn't be able to propagate in concrete, and something that looks like UHF but bends like sonar. It's all overlapping. It's all layered. It's like being inside a mouth. Rook pointed at the plate. So they named it, he said. That means it's in inventory. I moved closer to the core. The heat coming off it was intense but not radiative in the way nuclear heat feels. Nuclear heat feels sharp and wrong. It feels like your skin is getting cooked from the inside out. This heat felt like standing next to a running diesel generator in a small room. Thick, oily. You breathe it in and it coats the back of your throat. You taste copper and carbon. You cough without meaning to. The channels cut into the stone weren't smooth. They were grooved like bone growth rings. Some grooves were clean. Some were scarred like they'd burned and healed over. In those scars I could see embedded fragments of metal that didn't match the surrounding material. Shiny, machined, polished edges, human work jammed into non-human channels. Ledger swallowed. This is an anchor, he said. His voice had gone clinical. That's his trauma voice. He only sounds like that when his brain detaches to stay alive. They're using nuclear load as an anchor. What does that mean? I asked. It means they're dumping energy density into a geometry that doesn't respect our dimensional boundary, so it stays put, he said. Bind, contain, awaken. English, Rook said. They're stapling something in place with a reactor, Ledger said. The hum in the room shifted like something hurt us. The air pressure jumped. My ears popped. The hair on the back of my neck prickled. Every rack in that chamber blinked at once. Status lights strobed in a sequence I've never seen before. Green, amber, red, then a color my eyes didn't want to name. My stomach lurched. Chapel hissed and slapped her tablet like it had burned her hand. It just talked to me in my own interface, she whispered. It pinged my MAC address. How is that possible if we're air-gapped? We're air-gapped. We're air-gapped. Voss stepped up beside me, weapon low but tight. He was breathing through his nose in slow, controlled pulls. He looked calm for anyone else. For Voss, he looked rattled. This is why they brought us, he said quietly. Radiological survey, Rook muttered, bitter. I leaned in closer to the brushed plate. The letters in Damascus Protocol were hand-set, not machine-engraved, too shallow. You could see where the scribe slipped on the ishi and cut a hair deep, then tried to buff it back down. That means human hands marked this hardware in situ. That means at least one other team had been in this room, close enough to touch, calm enough to label. Someone had time to name the cage. Someone had time to warn us. Do not answer it if it talks. The layered voice rolled through the chamber again. Stronger now, no longer leaking through metal and distance. Right there with us, in the air, in the core, in the back of my teeth. It said, witness. It said, comply. It said, maintain lattice. Then, new words. It said, debt required. The way it said, debt, made my spine go cold. The word felt like a hand closing around the base of my skull. Ledger gagged. Chapel whispered, it knows we're here. The hum climbed a half step. The ribs in the ceiling vibrated faster. The bronze-looking spars along the arch flexed like tendons under stress. A low alarm tone bled out of one of the Air Force racks. The tone started normal. 2-beat pulse, standard warning. Then it bent into a chord I felt in my bones instead of heard in my ears. I realized, standing there in that heat and hum and pressure, that we were not surveying a leak. We were relieving a guard. We were the relief shift. We just hadn't been told the job description. The thing stepped forward. I keep saying the thing, because I don't have a better noun that won't make you think I'm telling a ghost story. Ghosts don't hum in VLF. Ghosts don't negotiate reactor load. This wasn't a shadow in a hallway. This was an interface. It closed distance without walking distance and stood between us and the core, tall enough now that I realized I'd misjudged the scale. It wasn't chapel height. It wasn't my height. It was my height stretched wrong. The shoulders were too narrow for that height. The arms hung too long. The elbows bent backward and then forward again in a way that made my stomach flip. The head floated a hair off the neck. The face looked almost human if you didn't focus too long. If you did, the features didn't line. The eyes sat just a bit too far apart. The mouth lagged the jaw when it moved. The skin wasn't skin. It was a surface pretending to be skin, the way a cheap deep fake pretends to be a face. Light bent at its edges. Not reflected. Bent. Chapel made a small sound in her throat. The layered voice didn't come from its mouth. The mouth moved, yes, but the sound came from everywhere at once. Ceiling, floor, core, inside my own jaw, inside my ears. It braided 12 voices. Male, female, laughing, crying, calm, angry, pleading, commanding. It moved through accents like flipping channels. Southern drawl, flat Midwest. No accent at all. It all hit layered, phase-locked tight. You could feel the pressure of it in your sinuses. Witness, it said. We stood frozen. No one answered. Comply, it said. What do you want? Voss asked. Do not, I hissed. Too late. The temperature dropped to 10 degrees in a snap. My breath fogged even though the air had been wet heat a second before. Frost bloomed along the bronze ribs overhead, then sublimated like mist blown backward into nothing. The core hummed higher. My teeth hurt. Ledger gasped and clutched his chest like someone had reached in and squeezed. Debt, it said. Chapel whispered, What debt? The head turned toward her. The mouth moved, slow, lagging. The eyes didn't blink. I don't think they could. They looked painted on. Painted, then lit from behind like backlit instrument dials. Containment load must be fed, it said. Life, memory, time. You maintain lattice. You pay down debt. Rook shook his head. That's not English, he whispered. It sounds like English, but it's not English. The mouth smiled. The smile didn't reach the eyes. The eyes didn't move at all. It said, We hold door, we bind, we contain, we bleed, you inherit post, you stand watch, you pay, or you breach, you run, you take debt with you. What happens if we leave? Voss asked. Stop talking to it, I said. My voice cracked hard. My throat felt dry and raw like I'd swallowed sand. Leave, it said, and you will carry weight. You will carry mark. You will carry time owed. You will not outlive balance. My pulse hammered. I could hear it in my jaw. I could feel each beat in my gloves. And if we stay, Ledger whispered. His voice sounded thin. Stay, it said. and lattice holds. We remain below, you remain above. We bleed with you. You will not be alone. The way it said, "not be alone," made bile rise in my throat. This is where I need you to understand something. This wasn't myth. This wasn't prophecy. This was contract language. It talked like a machine reading legal bullet points. It laid out terms and penalties. It wasn't angry. It wasn't pleading. It was operational. It raised one long, wrong arm and pointed at Chapel. The finger was too long. The knuckle joints were in the wrong places. The nail wasn't a nail. It was smooth and glossy and curved like a lens. "Signal," it said. "Yours. You will fracture. You will still hear, but you will not transmit clean. You will be alone in noise. You will pay with voice." Chapel swallowed. Her jaw trembled. It pointed at Ledger. "Biology," it said. "Yours. You will heal what is broken. You will bleed what is whole. You will speak in organs that are not named. You will pay with body." Ledger made a low sound in his throat. He clutched his chest harder. His face had gone gray. It pointed at Rook. "Entry," it said. "Yours. You will lose. You will remove. You will not bleed out. You will pay in parts." Rook whispered, "No," and shook his head hard like a kid refusing medicine. It pointed at Voss. "Perimeter," it said. "Yours. You will not speak in human tone again. You will carry tone. You will frighten your own. You will pay in voice." Voss's jaw flexed. He didn't say a word. Then it pointed at me. "Containment," it said. "Yours. You will forget and remember wrong. You will love a pattern that never lived. You will hold anchor in sleep. You will pay in memory." The ring in my pocket felt hot against my arm through the fabric. "What does it mean by anchor?" I asked. I don't know why I asked. Instinct, maybe. Habit. I negotiate load. That's my job. Get terms. Lock terms. The head tilted. The mouth smiled. The eyes stayed painted. "You will bind, and you will be bound," it said. "You will dream in lattice. You will answer when called. You will not be alone in dark." My mouth tasted like copper and rot. I understood, then, what Damascus Protocol was. It was a human word for a job post. This wasn't a salvage job. This wasn't containment inspection. This was a watch change. Someone above us had decided our 5 bodies were an acceptable down payment to keep something sealed that should not be loose in air. "Negative," I whispered. "We are not your shift." The hum rose. The ribs in the ceiling flexed. The pressure in the room spiked hard. My ears roared. The core buzzed in a way that made my eyes water. The layered voice hit like a hammer. "Breach," it said. Then the world folded. Alarms lit across the Air Force racks in colors that weren't part of any standard panel. Not red, not amber, not green. A color my brain read as warning, but couldn't name. The sound wasn't a siren. It was childhood, and that's the only honest way to say it. I heard the creak of the hallway in the house I grew up in. I heard my mother humming in the kitchen. I heard Lena laughing in my car the first night I told her I was going to marry her. I heard Ledger's baby try to cry around a tube that shouldn't have been in a baby's throat. The noise wasn't noise. It was memory turned into pressure and pumped through the air like tear gas. The room moved. I don't mean we felt like the room moved. I mean the geometry around us changed, like somebody bent a map while we were still standing on it. The core stayed where it was. The ribs in the ceiling flexed and twisted. The walls stretched, then snapped, then stretched again. The floor under my boots rippled like thick water. My stomach lurched. I grabbed for balance and my hand landed on air that felt like steel. My fingers closed on nothing and hit resistance like a rail. I almost vomited. Rook fired, instinct, panic. He yanked his carbine halves together, magnets snapping, and sent a short burst at the shape. The rounds left the muzzle and did not behave like rounds. I watched them in slow clarity I should not have had. 3 subsonic 300 blackout slugs left the barrel. They stayed slugs for maybe half a meter. Then they curved in 3 different directions mid-flight like someone had grabbed each one between finger and thumb and bent their path. One turned into a spray of black petals that looked like wilted flowers and fell straight down, clattering on the floor like metal washers. One vanished. Just gone. No impact, no noise. The third bent a full 90 degrees and slammed into the far wall, where it sank into the black composite, like it had hit mud instead of solid surface. The surface rippled, swallowed, and went smooth again. No hole, no mark. The shape flickered. It existed in front of us, then 2 meters left, then behind Ledger, then right in front of me, all in less than a blink. My brain tried to stack those positions into one timeline and failed. Pain spiked behind my eyes. I tasted blood. Chapel screamed. I spun. Chapel was on her knees, both hands clamped over her ears, tablet on the floor in front of her flashing a cascade of characters too fast to read. Not letters, not numbers, just glyphs. The glyphs pulsed in time with the hum in the room. Blood leaked between her fingers. Not a lot, just a thin line, dark in the copper light, running down along her jaw. Her mouth was open in a silent scream now. No sound came out. Her throat worked. Nothing. Ledger stumbled backward into a rack and knocked it sideways. The rack didn't fall the way a rack falls. It hinged. One moment it was beside him. The next moment it was behind him, like the room had turned 90 degrees where he stood, but not where I stood. He yelled and grabbed his chest. His fingers dug into his own sternum like something inside had just punched outward. His eyes rolled white for a second. He gasped air like each breath was a command he had to execute before the next one would be granted. I could smell blood and something else, something sterile, hospital clean. I flashed on the NICU photo in his badge flap. Pink skin, clear tube, tubes in a place nothing that small should need tubes. Voss lifted his weapon and shouted orders, but what came out of his mouth wasn't English. It wasn't any language I know. It sounded like feedback played backward through a broken speaker underwater. His face registered shock. He heard it too. He tried again, louder. The sound got worse. The pitch climbed past human range and into a tone that made my jaw ache and my vision blur. The core flared. Not with light, with pressure. I felt something grab my head from the inside. Not hands. Gravity. Focus. Like someone had put my skull in a vise and was dialing it in. Images slammed my vision. Lena in a hospital bed, pale and smiling. Lena with no scar on her throat, laughing in morning light that never happened because she never stayed over that early. Lena in a kitchen I have never seen wearing a ring I have not given her yet. Lena holding a baby that looks like a blend of her eyes and my mouth. That baby does not exist. I know it does not exist. I know it. I know it. I know it. My knees buckled. I think I yelled. I don't remember hearing myself. The shape flickered and reappeared inches from my face. The mouth smiled. The eyes stayed painted. The layered voice smashed into my skull like a hammer made of electricity and childhood guilt. "Breach," it said again. Then, "You pay now." Something tore, not in the air, in time. The chamber snapped. For a split second I saw us from outside ourselves. 5. Bodies locked in panic and pain around a machine altar wired into a ribbed ceiling that flexed like an animal's chest. The ribs shuddered. The cables glowed. The bronze spars bent in a way metal does not bend without screaming. The air around us churned like water in a blender. The black symbols on the walls burned hot red, then white, then black again. Rook was firing into nothing and sobbing. Ledger was on the floor clutching his own chest with both hands like he was trying to hold in an organ that wanted out. Chapel had blood running from both ears now and was still trying to talk, but her throat gave her nothing. Voss had his weapon up and his mouth open and sound coming out that made the bronze ribs over our heads vibrate like tuning forks. I was on my knees, one hand on the core, my ring finger pressed to the brushed plate that read Damascus Protocol, and I was crying. Then the floor dropped out from under us and we were somewhere else. We were topside. 1 second I was on my knees with my hand on warm metal that hummed in my bones. The next second I was on cracked tile in a maintenance corridor that smelled like old bleach and floor wax. The hum was gone. The pressure was gone. The air felt thin and cold. My ears rang like I'd just come off a firing line without plugs. My stomach rolled. I gagged and spit copper on gray tile. The hallway around us was base standard. Painted cinder block. Fluorescent tubes. Red stenciled warnings about eye pro and hearing pro and authorized personnel only. The world felt too bright. The angles felt too clean. The straight lines felt wrong after what we'd just walked through. Rook was on the floor against the wall opposite me. He was curled on his side, gasping. His left pant leg below the knee was flat. I don't mean bloody, I mean flat. The fabric just ended mid-shin and sealed over smooth. No stump, no bone, no blood. Just a clean, glossy surface where his calf and foot should have been, like he'd been molded that way fresh out of a factory. He ran both hands over it, shaking. His fingers traced where his knee should have been. There was nothing to grab, nothing to press, no wound to tourniquet. He sobbed once, a sharp, barked sound. "No," he said. "No, no, no." His voice cracked high. I'd never heard his voice crack. Ledger was sitting with his back against a supply cabinet, both hands clamped over his chest. His fingers were slick with something clear, not blood. His shirt under his vest was wet and bulged in a way that made my stomach turn. The bulge moved. Something under his sternum pushed against his palms from the inside like a small animal trying to get out. His eyes were wide and white and fixed on nothing. He whispered, "NICU," over and over. "NICU, NICU, NICU." Like a mantra, like a prayer, like a location he needed to reach. Clear fluid leaked at the corners of his mouth. It smelled sterile. Hospital clean. Antiseptic and saline. Chapel was on her knees. Hunched forward, tablet shattered on the floor in front of her. Blood streaked both sides of her neck where it had run down from her ears and dried tacky in her collar. Her eyes were wide and wet. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. She was talking. I could see her throat move. I could see her tongue form words. Nothing came out. No sound. Total mute. Her hands shook so hard her knuckles flashed white under skin. Voss was standing. Barely. He had one hand on the wall, steadying himself. Carbine still slung tight against his chest like muscle memory wouldn't let him drop it. He looked at me and said something. His mouth formed English. I watched it. "You good," he said. That's what his lips said. What came out of his throat sounded like feedback through a broken PA system under 3 feet of water. Flat. Metallic. Wrong. Almost subsonic. The sound made the fluorescent tubes overhead flicker. I flinched and threw a hand up on instinct. He winced like I'd slapped him. He tried again, softer. The sound dropped lower. My stomach turned. The bulbs overhead buzzed like hornets. I pushed myself upright. My knees shook. My left arm burned like I'd held it in a fire. I reached across with my right hand and touched my left bicep pocket out of reflex. The ring was still there. For a second, I saw Lena's face. Not Lena in recovery with the scar on her throat and the IV in her hand. Lena in a kitchen I don't own. Sunlight through curtains I've never bought. Smiling down at a baby that does not exist because we haven't made it. Because she's still in recovery. Because I haven't even asked her yet. The baby had her eyes and my mouth. The image locked into my head like a memory I love. I felt my throat close. Tears burned hot in my eyes. I swallowed hard. That memory is not real. I know that. I know that. I know that. But when I try to see Lena in the hospital bed how she really looked last time I saw her, I can't pull it clean. My mind keeps giving me the kitchen that doesn't exist instead. That's the cost they said I'd pay. Containment. Memory. Anchor. Status, I tried to say. My voice came out raw. Chapel looked up at me. She nodded fast, like, I hear you, but she couldn't answer. Her mouth moved. Her throat worked. Nothing. Ledger whispered, NICU, again, and tried to push himself to his feet. His legs shook. He crumpled back down. He gagged. Clear fluid spilled down his chin. It smelled like saline and iodine. His eyes were wild. He wasn't fully here. Half his mind was in a hospital room with a machine he somehow suddenly knew how to run. A machine built to keep lungs going in something too small to live. I could see it on his face. He understood ventilator settings he'd never been trained on. He had knowledge he shouldn't have and a body that was not built to hold it. Rook dragged himself upright along the wall using his hands and one knee. His missing leg didn't bleed. It didn't weep. It just ended. Smooth, glossy, sealed, like finished production. He looked more furious than hurt. Fear sat under the fury, sharp and bright. They took my fucking leg, he spat. His voice cracked again. They took my leg and they didn't even give me the courtesy of a scar. Voss said something else. His mouth formed. We have to move. The sound that came out of his throat made my eyes water and my guts twist like I'd swallowed a speaker coil. The bulbs overhead flickered again and one popped with a soft glass ping. He flinched at the noise and clenched his jaw. Alarms started up the hall. Real alarms this time. Human alarms. Bass internal klaxons. You could hear boots, far, getting closer. Voices down the corridor shouting clipped orders in clean English with that specific bored urgency that says, we drill this weekly. We had surface company inbound. We're burned, I whispered. My throat hurt. My head pounded. My left arm throbbed in time with my pulse. We're not walking out the front door. Rook barked a laugh that had no humor in it. You think they're letting us walk out at all, he said. Ledger whispered, NICU. One more time and then went limp. His head slumped forward. His chest still moved. I could see it move. The bulge under his sternum pulsed like a second heartbeat. Footsteps hit hard tile 30 meters out. Keys clacked. Radios chirped. Someone yelled, hands where I can see them, in a voice that thought it understood the situation. We raised our hands. They separated us. That was the first sign this wasn't going to be written up as a spill or a leak or any other normal base incident. Standard mishap protocol keeps the element together through initial medical scan and immediate statement to preserve timeline continuity. We did not get that. We got grabbed by 4 men in gray utilities with no rank tabs, no unit identifiers, and no names on their chests. All 4 wore nitrile gloves. All 4 wore full-face clear shields. None of them looked me in the eye. They dragged Ledger first. 2 of them, one under each armpit. Ledger's boots squealed on tile. He kept whispering, NICU, over and over, soft and panicked like a prayer. Clear fluid still leaked from the corner of his mouth. It smelled like disinfectant and saline and hospital plastic. One of the gray suits said, get him to Medbay 2, like he'd already assigned Ledger a room. No one asked Ledger what hurt. No one asked Ledger what happened down there. They were already treating him like an asset, not a patient. Biology. You will heal what is broken. You will bleed what is whole. Chapel tried to talk. Nothing came out. She reached for one of the gray suits and grabbed his sleeve with both hands. Her tablet was gone. Her eyes were huge. She moved her mouth fast. You could read the words if you watched her lips. I can still hear it, she was saying. I can still hear it. I can still hear it. The gray suit peeled her hands off his sleeve with 2 fingers like she was contaminated. He didn't look at her face. He just said, Comms lab, now, to someone behind him. Chapel made a sound then. It wasn't voice. It was raw air through a damaged throat. It didn't carry. You could see her rage and fear, and she couldn't push any of it out. Signal. You will fracture. You will still hear, but you will not transmit clean. Rook tried to stand on his sealed stump. He almost made it. He lurched, caught himself on the wall with one hand, and spat at the floor in front of the nearest gray suit. "Am I getting a Purple Heart for this?" he asked. His voice shook. He was trying to sound cocky. He sounded tired. The gray suit didn't answer. He just crouched, grabbed Rook under the arm, and hauled him onto a rolling gurney that had appeared like magic. Rook swore and swung at him. The gray suit didn't even flinch. "Or are we pretending this was training?" Rook yelled. He was angry now. Anger was easier than what sat under it. "Are we doing slip and fall in the shower paperwork? Huh. You gonna tell my VA rep I woke up like this?" The gray suit strapped him down at the shoulder and knee. The straps clicked like aircraft restraints. Entry. You will lose. You will remove. You will not bleed out. Voss tried to talk to me. He stepped in close, face tight, jaw clenched, eyes locked on mine like he was willing me to understand. His lips formed words, calm and controlled. "Do not fight," he was saying. "Wait, watch. They're scared of us." That's what I think he said. That's what his mouth said. That's not what I heard. What I heard was a low, subsonic grind that punched straight through my chest and set every fluorescent bulb in the corridor to buzzing. The sound made my teeth ache and my vision blur. Two of the gray suits flinched hard. One reached for his ear like he'd taken a physical hit. The nearest gray suit snapped, "Muzzle him!" Like Voss was a dog. They shoved a black rubber bite block between his teeth and ratcheted a strap around his head. Perimeter. You will not speak in human tone again. You will carry tone. You will frighten your own. Then they came for me. I expected cuffs. I expected zip ties. I expected a knee in the back and a face on tile. I've seen how they handle breach of protocol on secure sites. None of that happened. The gray suit in front of me smiled. It was a professional smile. 0 teeth, 0 warmth. He said, "You're safe," in a voice like a hostage negotiator on TV. He said, "You're okay. You did well." I could smell his breath through the clear shield. Coffee and mint gum. I said, "We need medical," because Ledger was out of sight now and I could still hear him whisper "NICU" down the hall like a radio transmission bleeding through walls. The gray suit said, "Medical is on the way." I said, "You don't even know what happened down there." He held my gaze. "Nothing happened down there," he said. I laughed. It came out cracked. He leaned in slightly. His shield reflected my own face back at me. I looked pale and wired. Eyes too wide. Sweat dried in salt lines along my temples. My mouth trembled. I still had my gloves on. My left bicep pocket bulged where the ring sat. The gray suit said, "Quiet." "Nothing happened down there, Sergeant. Annex 3H is a condemned HVAC crawl scheduled for demolition. You were never cleared to enter. You did not enter. You were found in a restricted corridor exhibiting signs of acute stress response following a routine training drill. Do you understand? There is a core down there," I said. My voice shook. "You've wired it into live racks. You have a plate on it. Damascus Protocol. It talked to us." His smile didn't change. "No," he said calmly. "That is incorrect." "It told us terms," I said. "It assessed debt. It marked us. It said we were the relief shift." He blinked once. Slow. "That is incorrect," he said again. "Do you understand?" My mouth went dry. I could still taste copper. "If I say yes," I asked, "do we walk?" "You will be escorted to medical," he said. "You will receive scans. You will each receive a brief. You will sign acknowledgement of the brief. You will then be processed for reassignment with commendation. Your service here will be recorded as satisfactory and complete. You will be advanced in grade. You will be given leave. Your dependents will receive continued benefits. You will not speak of tonight to anyone without Iron Vault clearance. You will not seek out any member of this team again." "And if I say no," I asked. His smile never touched his eyes. "No one will ever hear you say no," he said. I swallowed hard. My throat felt bruised. My head pounded. My left arm throbbed along the seam of my bicep pocket where the ring sat hot and heavy. I flashed again, unplanned, on Lena in that kitchen that doesn't exist. Sunlight. A ring on her hand. A baby in her arms that we haven't made. I tried to pull the real memory of her hospital room instead. I couldn't get it clean. The kitchen overlaid and pushed the hospital out. My stomach flipped. "You already did it," I whispered. "You're already in my head." The gray suit tilted his head, polite. "You're in shock," he said. "You're experiencing normal post-exercise disorientation." He called what happened exercise. He called what rewired my memory normal disorientation. He said it like a script he'd said before. He said it like doctrine. He put a hand on my shoulder. His glove squeaked against my vest. I could feel the pressure through the plates. Warm, firm, measured. "The good news," he said in that same calm hostage voice, "is you did not breach containment." That word hit like a slap. Containment. He knew the word. He understood it. He'd been briefed on it. This wasn't the first time they'd walked someone out of Annex 3H and told them their leg had always ended mid-shin. This was procedure. This was system. This was repetition. This was already doctrine. He guided me down the hall. The overhead fluorescents hummed. The air tasted like old mop water and hot dust. I could feel dried sweat on my back, turning itchy under my plates. My boots squeaked on the tile. The world felt too bright, too clean, too straight. My head pounded in time with my pulse. Behind us, somewhere down another corridor, I heard Voss try to shout and heard the lights flicker in response. Ahead of us, a badge-restricted door slid open on its own without a beep. The gray suit said, still calm, still friendly, "You're safe now." He was lying. I'm not the first person to hear this. I'm not the first person to be told to sit down and shut up. I'm not the first person to write Damascus Protocol on paper and circle it until the ink goes through. This is already doctrine. I can prove that without leaving open sources. June 18, 1982. Falklands. British Special Operations go dark for 9 hours in a sector the map calls Scrub and Rock. The unit tag that survives in MOD language is SAS Detachment, Material Recovery. That phrase shows up again years later in other countries. Material recovery. 2 men from that detachment live long enough to talk after discharge. Different interviews, different years. They both describe heat underground in cold air. They both describe a hum you feel in your jaw, not your ears. They both say they were told 3 words before they went under. Witness, comply, contain. One of them says on tape, "We were told not to answer it if it talked." He laughs when he says it. It's not a joke laugh. It's the laugh you make when you almost remember a nightmare and then decide you don't. I hear air move across the mic and metal clink in a glass when he does it. I can smell dust and old tape when I play that clip. That interview was never supposed to leave the regiment. October 9th, 1994. Murmansk Oblast. A Spetsnaz signals group is diverted from regular Arctic radar decommission work and sent to secure Legacy Deep Foundation under an early warning node outside Polyarny. And that radar site was supposed to be scrap. The concrete should have been dead. Instead, logs that survive in fragments mention localized heat bloom inside permafrost, non-conforming hatch metal, and speech-like modulation in ELF band not attributable to atmospheric or submarine. That's extremely low frequency. That's the band they use to talk to ballistic subs under the ice. You should not get structured signal in that band down a concrete shaft. You should not get vowels. You should not get anything that feels like time-delayed call and response. The after-action list of casualties does not say KIA. It does not say radiological. It says reassigned. Internal. Every single one of them. Reassigned internal means disappeared without honors in that system. I can taste cold metal in my mouth when I read those redacted Russian scans. The margins smell like dust and cheap toner. March 3, 2001. Baffin Bay Line. United States Air Force inspectors attached to the old DEW line go north under winter cover to assess decommission integrity of early warning radar foundations. The DU line is supposed to be a Cold War skeleton, empty shacks, dead dishes. Everyone knows that. Everyone's seen the photos of abandoned radar domes half buried in ice. But buried under one of those domes is a reinforced shaft that does not match Canadian engineering signatures, does not match USAF engineering signatures, and shows temperature rise in thermal that cannot be explained by residual power because the generators were torn out in 1989. The first 2 inspectors on that job are flown home early, quietly, no fanfare. One of them gets a sudden, compassionate reassignment to a desk post in Florida. One of them is medically retired at 34 with idiopathic vocal cord trauma. Idiopathic means we're done talking. That man never speaks again. He writes statements. He writes a line that reads, "It kept asking who was relieving it." Not what. Who? The ink on that line is darker than the rest. You can feel the bite of the pen in the paper when you run a fingertip across the scan. You can smell old file boxes and coal dust. August 12, 2009. North Pacific, 31.742, North, 143.991, West. A Navy SOSUS tech, Undersea Listening Network, Cold War, Erie, Anti-Submarine Net still partly active under new names, logs a broadband transient that looks like seismic but rides like intentional modulation. Translation: the array heard something that sounded like a voice pretending to be an earthquake. SOSUS pulls in whales, subs, landslides, cable strikes. It does not pull in vowels. This time it did. The tech flags it and calls it up. The fragment gets pulled out of the training archive less than 24 hours later. That never happens. Training archives are dead storage. You don't erase training material unless the training material isn't training. The tech later tells a friend, off books, "It said the word witness and it said it in my dad's voice and my dad was dead for 6 years. He quits 3 months later. He doesn't take his pension. He moves inland." The friend writes this in an email in 2011, and that email is still cached on a decommissioned personal domain. I pulled it before it went offline. The text smells like hot dust when you scroll it on an old laptop. The screen hums faintly. You can feel a little static on your palms. February 22, 2017. Continental United States. Coordinates redacted in every source I've found, but context puts it in the Southwest Weapons Test Range belt. A joint survey element from agencies that do not usually share rooms. Department of Energy. Radiological Emergency Response, Air Force Materiel Command, a contractor with a 2-letter name that bills for forensic metrology, and one medical officer with no branch tab at all, enters a decommissioned underground storage tunnel. That tunnel was supposed to hold outdated sealed sources, meaning old radiological material waiting for disposal. Lead drums, worn labels, boring hazard, harmless if you follow gloves and tongs rules. The joint element is in and out in under 2 hours. No formal incident is recorded. Yet 4 months later, one member of that team is logged as having a newborn with a congenital cardiac layout that none of the hospital's imaging software can parse. Anomalous vessel routing is the phrase a pediatric cardiology note uses. Another member of that team is medically cleared with functional amputation below knee without traumatic cause. Functional amputation without traumatic cause. Read that again. No blood, no wound, just, "It's gone now, sign here." Another member of that team is awarded an out-of-cycle promotion and immediately transferred to a communications analysis cell that doesn't appear on any org chart, then is never heard from again in open sources. The last member of the team, an unnamed perimeter security specialist, is issued a behavioral flag that says, "Do not engage verbally in confined spaces without acoustic dampening present." I have never seen that phrase in any normal force protection write-up. Acoustic dampening, as if his voice itself is a weapon. I can feel a faint ache in my molars when I read that line, like standing too close to a live transformer coil. October 14, 2025. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Annex 3H. Iron Vault Compartment. Subcompartment 3H. A 5-person element is told they are running a radiological accountability survey in a condemned HVAC crawl. They are told to confirm shielding integrity, pull legacy material, and clear the annex for demolition. They initial everything except live capture authority. They are told, "You will hear things that are not addressed to you. Do not answer them." They descend into a space that does not exist on paper, open a hatch that runs hot in cold air, and meet a system labeled Damascus Protocol, bolted into something that predates English. They are informed by an interface that isn't fully in our geometry that containment load must be fed, in life, memory, and time debt. They are offered a choice: stay and become part of the lattice, or leave and carry the debt. They leave. They surface alive. None of them surface whole. One comes back with a leg missing but sealed smooth like production plastic. 0 blood loss. One comes back with internal anatomy that has begun changing function and purpose in real time, and medical instinct he did not have that morning. One comes back with signal input intact and full loss of vocal output, but ears still hot with a voice that won't turn off. One comes back with a throat that makes subsonic machine tones that flash fluorescence and make other men flinch. One comes back with memory rewritten to include a life he hasn't lived yet with a woman who is still waiting for him to keep his promise and come home clean. The base calls it training stress response. The base calls it post-exercise disorientation. The base calls it nothing happened. The paperwork calls it reassignment. The gray suits call it safe. The doctrine calls it debt. Pattern, not story. Bind, contain, awaken. The structure repeats: old concrete or permafrost or seabed or decommissioned radar bunkers or an annex under a base that denies the annex exists. Wrong era, hardware. Heat where there should be cold. EM load where there should be silence. A hatch that doesn't match local metallurgy. A chamber where geometry argues with your eyes. A core wired into modern racks, labeled in English even when the base language is not English, stamped with a name that feels like warning and liturgy at once. A voice that is not a voice using phrases like witness, comply, maintain lattice, debt required. A human team that goes down as survey and comes up as tribute, silent, reshaped, useful. I'm sitting in a quiet room while I say this. I can hear my own breath bounce off drywall. I can hear the soft buzz off a cheap desk lamp. There's grit under my left palm from where I set the recorder down too hard. There's a faint smell of hot dust and copper in the air, the same smell you get when you run too much current through a cable that wasn't rated for it. Listen to the shape of it. We are not looking at a crash site. We are not looking at wreckage. We are looking at an installed system. We are looking at posts. Watch posts, anchor posts. They are under Allied bases, former Soviet early warning nodes, Cold War radar lines, naval listening arrays, and now, confirmed, under Wright-Patterson. Each one hums. Each one bleeds. Each one demands relief. This has been staffed for decades. We are late to the shift. I am alone when I record this. That is the rule. No witnesses, no co-signers. No one who can later be named, leaned on, burned. But I am not alone in this room. The lights in here are cheap LEDs. Desk lamp, overhead strip. When I started talking, they were steady. Now, they're not. They're pulsing. Not random flicker. Pulse. Warm, then warmer. Dim, then bright. The rhythm is not electrical noise. The rhythm matches the burned symbols described in Annex 3H. Circle and frame in circle and radial slice. I didn't notice it at first. I see it now. I can feel it now. The hum in the walls syncs to that pulse. You can feel it in your front teeth like standing near a live substation. You can taste the faint bite of ionized air, copper, ozone, heat off stressed wire. My watch is wrong. My watch says EO2.17. The wall clock says 01.03. My phone, which I have had in airplane mode since I started, says 06.42 and flashes red battery even though it was at 78% 20 minutes ago. Time is not drifting together. Time is buckling in 3 directions around me. I rub my thumb over the face of the watch and the glass feels warm, like skin. My palm comes away with a faint sheen. Sweet. Fruit left in a locked car. I wipe it on my jeans and the smell lingers. There are footsteps in the hallway outside this room. They're not right. Human footsteps land heel-toe, even in boots, even in panic, even in a run. Heel, toe, wait, roll. You can hear the meat in it. These footsteps don't have that. These are evenly spaced taps. Same force every time like a metronome on tile. No weight shift, no roll. No pause between right and left because I don't think there is a right and left. Just impact, impact, impact. Perfectly timed. The sound comes from slightly above where a head should be, not at floor level. My throat goes dry. I swallow. My spit tastes like old pennies. I did not tell you this part before because I did not want to believe it, and saying it out loud makes it real. When Halo surfaced, he still had his left bicep pocket zipped. Inside that pocket was a ring. Titanium band. Low glare. Waiting. He had been carrying it 3 weeks. He was going to ask Lena when she got cleared to go home. He told her the job that night would be routine. He told her he'd be back before sunrise. He told her, "This one's clean." After the debrief, he cannot remember Lena in the hospital bed. He tries, and he gets static. He tries, and his mind gives him a kitchen he has never stood in. Morning light through white curtains he has never owned. A baby that does not exist with her eyes and his mouth. A ring on her hand. A promise already kept. Memory rewritten as anchor. You will bind, and you will be bound. You will dream in lattice. You will answer when called. You will not be alone in dark. He told me that with tears on his face. He told me, "I can feel loving a kid I haven't met because she's not real, and it hurts worse than anything they did to my body." He told me the ring felt hot against his arm when the thing pointed at him. He told me that heat never went away. He said his pocket still warms up when the room gets quiet. He said sometimes at night he hears Lena's voice from the kitchen that doesn't exist, asking if he wants coffee, like they're already married, like he already kept his promise and came home clean, like a future dragged forward and pinned into place. The room I'm in smells like coffee. There's no coffee in here. There is a voice in this room now. It's not playing through a speaker. It's not leaking from the hallway. It's not coming down HVAC. It's behind me and in front of me and inside my jaw at the same time. It says my name, not my first name, my full name, the one I don't put on anything, the one that only shows on government forms and tax paperwork and 3 NDAs I signed in rooms with no windows. It says witness. The lights pulse. Warm, then warmer. Dim, then bright. It says comply. Something moves at the edge of my vision, left side. I turn. Lena is sitting in the corner of the room on the cheap chair I bought from a salvage office supply place last year. She's wearing an oversized sweatshirt, and her hair is pulled back in a way I have never seen her wear it outside of the hospital bed. She looks healthy. Her skin is warm. No yellow from meds, no scar on her throat. Her eyes lock on mine. She smiles, soft. The kind of smile you only give someone you already live with. The kind of smile that says we're tired but we're okay. There's a ring on her hand. Titanium. Low glare. Same band Halo kept in his pocket. She's holding a baby. I can hear the baby breathing. Slow, even, tiny little soft breaths. I can see the bundle move. I can see the weight in her arms. My body reacts before my brain does. My chest tightens. My throat goes hot. My eyes burn. I have an urge so strong it blanks everything else out. I want to stand and cross the room and kneel and put my hand on the back of that baby's head and feel the soft hair and say, "It's okay, I'm here." That baby does not exist. I know that. I know that. I know that. But my body doesn't. Lena looks at me and speaks. Her mouth moves in perfect sync. Her throat flexes. Sound comes out. The sound is not her voice. The sound is layered. Male, female, calm, command, pleading, laughing, crying, all braided, all phase-locked tight. I can feel it in my molars. I can feel it in the bones of my ear. I can feel it in the skin of my forearms like static. Maintain lattice, it says in her mouth. Her smile never changes. Debt required, it says in her mouth. The baby shifts. I hear a small sound. That sound is Lena's laugh. That sound is my laugh. That sound is a tone like a heart monitor and a low hum like a transformer coil under load. The LED strip overhead pulses faster. Warm, warmer. Dim, bright. The hum in the drywall climbs half a step. My watch ticks backward twice. I can smell hot copper and fruit rot under sugar. The air tastes sweet and burned. I am not at Wright-Patt right now. I am not under a base. I am not standing in Annex 3H. I am in a rented room above a strip of closed shops 3 states away, with peeling paint and a cheap lock on the door. I can feel the grit under my palm from where I set the recorder down too hard. I can feel sweat drying on my neck. I can hear traffic 2 blocks over. The system is here anyway. The system is in the room. The system does not care about distance. The system does not care about jurisdiction. The system does not care about chain of command or who you voted for or what flag you salute. The system cares that the shift never ends. The layered voice moves through Lena's mouth again. It says one last thing. The smile on her face does not move. The baby in her arms breathes slow, steady, calm. It says, "You heard this. That makes you witness. That makes you next."